which means... Wow, what's up, Sales Ascender? Sean here today. Hope you're doing really, really good. I'm so excited. Let's jump right into it. Elena F asks this. She says, Sean, what do you say when someone says to you, you're too expensive? Oh, such a good one, right? If you've had this one before, drop a comment down below, right? The very fast answer, and I shared it a little bit with in the comments above, but literally no emotion. So the first piece is just, it's that move, and it's like no emotion, right? So if somebody says you're too expensive, the very quickest way to get through this one, and I need to kind of set it up a little bit, and I'll tell a story here in a second, but when you haven't done your job in expressing what problem that they have and whether or not they actually have the problem so you can solve it. Because typically in the sales call, like if you get to this place where they're saying, oh my gosh, you're like way too expensive. There is this measurement of value for dollar. And I could tell you that 100% out of 100% of times, if you can share that the value that you're actually going to provide to the person is greater than any amount of money, and the impact that it can make in their business and their client's business is going to be extreme, then price gets thrown out the window. And this is how you alleviate the expensive question mark in the call, as long as you're portraying that kind of value. So one of the things, again, so like someone says, hey, Sean, you're too expensive. I'm like, which means... Because typically what they're doing is they're making a comparison in their mind, and they're comparing you to the alternative. It's either a competitor, or it's either a different business system, or it's something else, right? And so literally when you get to that place, you say, hey, you're too expensive, Sean, which means like that's the greatest response that I've ever used in this environment. And that's why I want to share it. It's a great tactic to use. Use it today if you ever get that response, because if you get to that part in the call and they say you're too expensive and you say, which means, like, you just, again, it's a little bit of acting. It's, which means, then they're going to turn around and they're say, well, it's, you're expecting me to do this for this, and this is, oh, okay, well, cool. Tell me more about that. Oh, well, I thought it would be closer. Okay, cool. Let's just handle this one thing really quickly. Like, is it a matter of money, or is it a matter of I didn't do my job right when I explained like how I'm going to help impact your world and business and change everything in your life? And when they say, oh no, it's, they're going to go back and forth one way or the other. And if they go down the path of, oh yeah, well, can you tell me more about this? Now you're right back into the pain conversation, and you've bypassed or gone over the you're too expensive move, and then you can dive back in and get into a high level of pain. I remember doing this. I used to sell electronic equipment to some of the biggest tier 1 companies on planet Earth, the biggest ones like Boeing's, Raytheon's, TRW Lucas, Bigelow Aerospace. Like those guys were all of my clients, and I would always go in there, and we were always the premium price, fastest producing electronics manufacturing firm that was out there. And so one time I went through the program, and in this case, like the biggest pains that I'd always sell to in the electronics world were consistent and reliable performance. Like those were basically like, are you getting the consistent performance out of your products every single time? And these guys were making like cryogenic laser guidance systems that like watch rockets through the sky, like some really pretty advanced stuff. And so I would always ask, like, is the consistency of your rockets following those lasers or the guidance system like where it needs to be? And they'd always say, no, here's the tolerance, and our other manufacturers out. Okay, great. Tell me more about that. And I would go down this whole pain funnel, and I would get to this place, right? And I remember having this conversation when they just came out with this new version of a circuit board, and we were building it for them. And literally they came to me and they said, Sean, you've been charging us $25,000 for a circuit board literally as big as this cell phone that went into this like cryogenic metal piece that would like direct. And it was crazy. And we were charging 25 grand for each one of those little circuit boards. And this new version came through. It was untested. It had never been built before. And typically when you do what we call the first article review or the first article piece in the electronics manufacturing world, there was always like this question mark of, okay, is it going to be consistent performing, and is it going to be reliable where it never breaks down? And at the time we were going through some solder changes, just not to get caught in the weeds here, but like solder went from lead based into lead free based solder. And so when we made that transition as an industry back in the day, there was like a lot of like malfunctioning when it came to reliability and performance. And so we were in this middle of this transition. And so we said, hey, look, they wanted it to be lead free because they were trying to follow the process. And like we had just been one of the first integrators of the lead free move. And we got to this place where it was like, this particular version of the build is going to be double. And the guy says to me, Sean, you're way too expensive. And I was like, which means? And he goes, well, our last version was $25,000. We have a budget of $45,000. And I said, okay, so you told me that there's a $10,000 difference here. Let me go back to my team, see what I can do. But what if that's not enough? Was the next question I had for him. And at this point, we had proven track record with him of reliability and consistency. So he said, well, I'll go back and see what I can do for budget-wise. And I said, well, let me see if we can make it work. We ended up settling at just $3,000 less than the full $50K. And it was a great compromise because we were doing this new process for them with these other parts that were way more pricey than the last piece. They were untested, unproven. And so like if someone comes at you and says, hey, you're too expensive, just kind of be like, which means, and that's it. And that'll drive you right back into the right part of the conversation. And you're letting the customer feel like he's in control. But really, as a sales professional, you're like, that's interesting. Why did you say that right then and there? Oh, well, because of this and this. Oh, so you're struggling with that. Tell me more, right? And it always goes back into the pain. And you discover the pain. You do a recap of the pain. You say, hey, if we can fix that problem, what's that worth to you? Oh, well, it would be worth X, right? And time, energy, money, whatever the case may be. And then at the end of the day, now you've got some warranted, here's the value that I'm going to bring. You just said, if I can solve this problem, is not only going to double your business, but it's going to flood your calendar. You're going to have whatever it's going to be. And literally we can move forward. So the impact of us doing this for you is going to be 10X, 100X, whatever the number is beyond what the initial investment is. Does that make sense to you now? Oh, totally. Okay, cool. So do you still feel like we're too expensive? No. Okay, let's move forward. And that, my friends, is how I deal with when they say you're too expensive. It's just, which means. It's a weird thing to say, but it's only 2 words, and it's 2 of the most powerful words you can use in any selling conversation. I hope that one helps you today. I love your face, and I'll see you tomorrow.